The K-pop industry in early 2024 was a loud place. It was a machine built on aggression, on high-concept lore, on dark visuals and synchronized noise that demanded your attention through sheer volume. Into this cacophony stepped TWS, and they didn't shout. That was the problem the industry had with them at first, or what looked like a problem. They debuted on January 22nd with Sparkling Blue, and the title track, Plot Twist, didn't try to beat the system at its own game. It simply ignored the game entirely. While everyone else was trying to be global superstars from day one, 6 young men stood there and offered something almost dangerous in its simplicity: presence. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with us. It sounded like a marketing slogan, but really, it was a structural shift. They positioned themselves not as distant idols to be admired, but as a constant in the periphery of your life. And while the initial reaction was polite, the market was skeptical. We've been trained to expect a spectacle. A debut without fireworks, without a convoluted universe to decode, felt like a non-event. But that quietness wasn't a lack of ambition. It was the opening move of a long game. There was a prevailing narrative in the industry at the time, almost an unspoken law among critics and chart analysts. Bright, easy-listening pop from male idols was dead. The market, they said, demanded intensity. Anything soft was labeled floozy or dated, destined to be buried by the heavy hitters. TWS was structurally marginalized before they even released their first note because their very existence violated the current meta. They were branded Boyhood Pop, a term that sounds gentle, harmless, easy to overlook. The industry treats harmless things as disposable, but what the experts missed was that the audience was exhausted. The constant barrage of dark and powerful concepts had created a fatigue that nobody was talking about. By walking into this gap, TWS wasn't just releasing music. They were stepping into a vacuum that the major labels had arrogantly assumed didn't exist. They were underestimated specifically because they didn't look like they were trying to conquer the world. They looked like they were just hanging out. You have to look at the timeline to understand the weight of what happened next. 23 days. That is all it took for them to win on Show Champion. In a culture where rookie hierarchies are usually enforced through months of grind, TWS shattered the pace. But the real test wasn't the music show win. It was the digital charts. When Plot Twist started climbing Melon, the industry didn't know how to react. It defied the logic that boy group songs needed a loud chorus to go viral. It was breezy, it was sincere, and it was inescapable. By the end of the year, topping Melon's year-end chart wasn't just a trophy for the shelf. It was a direct repudiation of years of industry groupthink. TWS proved that the boy group sound wasn't a monolith that had to be loud to be heard. They legitimized the soft approach, turning the genre's supposed weakness into its greatest asset. The experts were forced to rewrite the rulebook, not because TWS disrupted the system, but because they exposed a crack in the foundation that was there all along. The pressure following that debut was immense, and this is where most groups falter. The industry loves to pin a one-hit wonder narrative on anyone who dares to break the mold with something unexpected. The summer of 2024 became the qualification round. If Plot Twist was a fluke, the summer beat EP with If I'm S, Can You Be My N would be the statistical correction. The market was waiting for them to pivot, to try something cooler to prove they belonged. They didn't. They doubled down. Breezy guitars, lighthearted choreography, smiles that looked too genuine to be manufactured. It was a risk. In a scene that idolizes swag and attitude, sticking to boyhood pop could have looked like stubbornness, but it worked. The song became the soundtrack of the actual season, not just the music show season. It played in cafes, it drifted out of car windows. It proved that their consistency wasn't a lack of creativity, but a deliberate strategy to build a brand identity that was immune to trends. They weren't chasing the moment, they were becoming the backdrop to it. Then came the challenge that no one expected. And frankly, it was the moment I knew they understood the assignment better than anyone else. November 2024, they announced a cover of Seo Taiji and Boy's Last Festival. You don't touch a classic like that lightly. The scrutiny was going to be brutal. The original is sacred ground in Korean music history. If they messed it up, the backlash would have been immediate and unforgiving. But they treated the song with respect without treating it like a museum exhibit. They kept the boyhood pop intact, injecting their bright energy into a track that defined a generation before they were born. The harmonies were clean, the staging respectful yet playful. They passed the vibe check with the generation that built the industry, bridging a gap that usually takes idols years to cross. It was a credential that no award show trophy could provide. It signaled that they weren't just a product of the current idol system. They were students of the culture, capable of handling the weight of the past while defining their future. By the time April 21st, 2025 rolled around, the narrative had shifted from "can they survive" to to how far will this go? The release of Try With Us and the single Countdown felt inevitable. The urgency was there, yes, but it was controlled. The richer instrumentation, the harder-hitting choreography, it wasn't a desperate grasp for maturity, it was a natural evolution, like a teenager growing into their adult voice. They look comfortable on stage, a terrifying trait for competitors because it implies they haven't even peaked yet. The awards that followed: Rookie of the Year at the Asia Artist Awards, the Desang at the D Awards, the Bonsang at Golden Disc, these weren't surprises. In a documentary about a group that struggled, these would be emotional climaxes. For TWS, they were just paperwork, the confirmations of an authority that had already been established in the public consciousness. The breakpoint hadn't been a single explosion. It was the slow, crushing realization that TWS wasn't going away. The system couldn't contain them because they weren't fighting the system anymore. They were operating on a frequency that the industry couldn't jam. What's fascinating is how they managed to scale without losing the core promise. Usually, when a group goes global, the intimacy dies. You can't be 24/7 with us when you're selling out stadiums in Tokyo and New York. But the bond with SAI, their fandom, operates differently. It's not the parasocial relationship of the past. It's a functional familiarity. They remember names, they hang around after events to chat, not because management told them to, but because it seems to be how they function. That's the strategic excellence here. They weaponized sincerity. In an industry built on barriers between idol and fan, TWS removed the barriers and treated the fans like participants. Their music became the score to everyday life: study sessions, family drives, lonely afternoons. It's not hype music, it's living music. And because it's integrated into the mundane routines of listeners, it's stickier than any viral hit. You can get tired of a trend, but you don't get tired of a feeling. Looking at where we are now, mid-2025, the map is clear. The boyhood pop sound that was dismissed as a niche debut concept has expanded the entire structure of what a male idol group can be. They didn't have to fracture their identity to succeed. They expanded the definition of success to include them. They've shared stages with the biggest names, not as the awkward rookies, but as peers, because the energy they bring is distinct. It's a language that crosses borders without needing translation, because the feeling of youth, of summer, of genuine connection is universal. The tagline "With Us" started as a name, but it ended up as a prophecy. They are here, constant and steady, while the rest of the industry frantically searches for the next plot twist. TWS didn't need a twist, they just needed to be there, and they were always going to be there.